All right, y'all, we're back. We're doing another video on our DM7, picking up where we left off. The last video, we were kind of getting sound out of the board and setting up our mix bus and routing that way. This video, we're going to keep going with that, and we're going to talk about running our in-ears off of this. So typically, you might have like a monitor console and everything else. This board has so many channels. I'm just running them off of this board, and then everybody can control it from their app and everything else like that. So I'm going to just go through how to set that up. First of all, we kind of talked about this in our last video, but we're going to go to our setup and we're going to go to our bus setup here. Now, we did this in our last video, so we want our mixes because I want stereo mixes for this. So I have my mix buses. We need 11 of them, so that's 22 mono channels set to stereo, and then we're good to go there. I'm going to exit out of this. I'm going to switch this to our outputs, and I'm going to at the top at mix 1, 2, so you can see that these are all stereo linked. So 1 and 2, 3 and 4. So I'm just going to change the name of all these. IEM 1. All right, we got everything named. Now we're going to change them all to white. Again, I like to do white for all of my channels that are not going to go out to the PA, and this way I just know that these will not be coming out my PA. I got them all white. Now I'm going to go through and I'm going to give these symbols. Makes it a little bit easier to just know what IEM it is when they're searching through the app. So I'll do that here. All right, we're good there. Now I'm going to go through and just make sure none of these are going to my PA. So I'm going to switch to this view here. And we know that if these were going to my PA, this would be selected here. That would mean that if this fader's up, it's going out my PA. So I don't want that. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to turn them off. It looks like they're all off, which is good. They just start as off. I love that. So we're good to go there. So some general practices I do for my IEMs is I like to set my fader at -5. This way I know we're not going to be clipping their signal. And then on the dynamics, I'll just set a limiter. I like to switch it to this legacy comp and then go to this infinity here and just a super fast 1 millisecond attack, super fast release. We're going to switch this to hard knee. And then I'm going to pull my threshold down just to -1. Then I know and I got to turn it on. Then I know I'm never going to be clipping. Between -5 here, this limiter that I have setting here, I know that we're going to have safe levels going into the ears. Whether it's like an errant snare drum or anything else, this is going to catch it. And then on our EQ, I like to put just like kind of like a general mix bus EQ here. So I'll kind of set this at 30. I'll give us a nice bump here at 10K. I like a shelf, and then I like to make this Q a little softer. There you go. And then maybe just a little bit of mud cleanup here. So maybe at 250 or something, just a dB or so. And then I can copy this and put it on all of these mix buses. And this way, so it's like if the musicians are asking something like, hey, my mix is feeling a little muddy. I can just, I have this band here. I can pull out some mud. I can adjust whatever they're hearing and what they need. But this is like a good general starting place here. So I'll copy and paste that over to all my IEMs here. Same thing with my dynamics. I want to grab this and I want to copy and I want to paste. And we'll pull all these down to -5. Now, here's a major tip. Something that I run into a lot is sometimes I'll be like, hey, I'm not getting signal out of my ears. And it's as simple as in the app, they can turn on and off their bus. So some reason it got turned off. It's usually not intentional. It's not very clear on the app whether they can turn it on or off. So I'll pull up their mix, and the first thing I always check for is this. So that is something I run into a lot. So it seems obvious, but these kind of things are just like for quick sussing out the problem. Usually it's that it's off. And then now what I can do is, how do I get sound to here? So there's so many different ways to do it on this board. So I'm going to switch back to our inputs. I'm going to go to the top. And then what I'll do is you can go sends on fader. And then when I do this and say our drum IEM, now every time I move a fader, it's just the fader for this drum IEM. It's a great place to just put everything at -10 going into the bus, and then based on the player or whatever, then they can boost, you know, themselves the most. So like drums, you know, I'll put those at 0 because the drummer is going to want to hear himself the most. So right now these faders are set to follow my mix, and we'll talk about that more in a second. But basically, whatever balancing I'm doing of the drums is going to be mimicked in here. So it's not, everything is not going to be at 0. It's going to be based on what I have going for the front of house, which is, you know, can be a good starting place for a mix, and also can be annoying for some people. And we'll talk about how we're going to adjust that in a second. Now, click, obviously we want pretty loud. Bass tracks, we'll just set everything else at -10. And then they can adjust from there. But this gives them plenty of headroom and is just a great place to start. And there's also a really quick way to do this, I'll show you, but it's a -6, setting everything at -6, but we're just going through and just getting a general mix together. Now, when I have like a virtual sound check or something, I can go through here and I can actually mix their ears or whatever. I can just set to where I'm just listening to their mix, and I can go through and absolutely dial these in much more than this. This is just talking about how we get a starting place. And another thing, we're going to want this MD up loud, and the talkback. Now, rooms. This is great for their ears, honestly, because it helps them feel like they're not just isolated from everything. So, you know, when you have these in-ears in, it can start to feel a little closed off. So you'll see a lot of people pull one out and have one in so they can still hear and feel. Putting the room mics in there really, really help that. So I'm going to bring those up. And now, as far as the mics go, I'm pretty sure we set these up. We did. So for our IEMs, I guess they're starting here. I'm going to pull these up here like that. And this is so there's no latency in the ears, in the monitoring. The stuff that's going out the front of house, I'm using waves on, and that's going to add some latency and can feel weird. So I'll put those in here. And let's see, did we make some drum reverb last time we were at this? We did. So let's put some drum reverb in there. Here we go, some drum reverb. Perfect. Now my drum mix is good. So then I can switch to my bass mix. Notice these faders went back down, and I can do the same thing for my bass mix, but I want my bass to be louder. So that's a good place there. Let's try a vocalist. So let's say our lead vocalist here. I'm going to go through now on these, because it's a vocalist, I'm going to start the drums at -10, and I'm going to let them dial it in from there. So here we go. So we want the MD loud. We want some room verb for sure. Remember, I don't want, this is for mic 1. IEM 1 is for mic 1. I don't want this mic up loud. I want the one that's not going to the house. So this one, I'm going to put this one up loud, and then I'm going to put the other ones in like lower. And this way there's no latency in the ears. And then I can EQ that mic differently than the front of house EQ for their ears. So then I can like really help make it sound like their voice in their ears, and it doesn't affect the front of house mix at all. So the only thing, they share gain, but I take care of gain on the mic itself, on the mic receiver itself, so it's not a big deal. Boom. Okay, so now let's talk about like panning. If I'm singing, I don't want the other vocalist coming down the center either. I want to come down the center, and I want to pan the other vocalist out of the way. Maybe I want the guitars on this side, keys on this side. So how would I do that? What I can do is go here. Like I said, there's a million different ways to do everything on this board, which is great. But I can come to this here, this side panel screen here, and this is going to pull up. There's my drum IEMs. So IEM 1. I'm working on IEM 1 right now. So I want to pan this guy over here, and then I'll select this, and I'm going to pan this one over here, this one over here, this one over here. And now I'm getting some stereo image going on my in-ears, on my in-ear mix, which is great. And this I'm going to put over here. You know, I can move my acoustic out of the center. And, you know, let's say I want my keys. I want my keys on this side, and I want my electrics on this side. It's a preference thing, whatever they want to do. But this way I'm starting to get things out of the way. Typically I just like a good rule of thumb is like low end, like your bass, your kick drum, and your snare drum, and your lead vocal are coming down the middle. And then everything else you can kind of get, like, move out of the way of those things. Those are the most important things. So those always come down the middle, have both sides. And for front of house, I don't like doing like super aggressive panning, because it can, I want somebody sitting on the right side to have the same experience as somebody sitting on the left, personally. But for the in-ears, I definitely will pan hard, because I want things out of the way so they can hear exactly what they want to hear, how they want to hear it. So that's how we set that up. And I can also mute things. Maybe they don't want to hear the guitars in there, so I can just select the guitars, and I think, boom, you're no longer going to that IEM 1. And the other way, I can also blow this thing up here. And this is what I meant by there's a fast way to do this. I can send, I've got my electrics. I can just send -6 to this electric guitar, -6 to everybody's in-ear mix. And I can just say, pan it left, pan it left, pan it left, pan it left, pan it left. And, that's a really quick way to do it, or center it. They don't want it panned left. Boom. So I love that. I can exit out of here and press home here. We're back to the screen. So I know I'm on sends on faders if this button is lit up blue, so I want to make sure I'm back to this. Now let's kind of go through and talk about our bus setup. We're going to go back to here and talk about this send point. Sometimes I'm EQing the keys. I don't have a separate track for the keys. So the EQ that's going to the house is what's going to the keys player's ears. And maybe they're like, hey, I don't like how my keys are EQ'd. Can you just send it pre-EQ? And that's great. So I can be like, okay, I'm going to select this here. I'm going to go to my send point here. I'm going to select here, and I'm going to go to my keys IEM. And this is his channel here, the keys. I'm going to go pre-EQ. And then everything else is still fine, or whatever else. Maybe he doesn't like the EQ on something else. It's fine. I can just pull it pre there. Now on this, I don't want it to follow my on their ears. There's certain things, maybe I want the house music or the video playing so that they can hear it, and that'll fall when I unmute it in front of house, it's unmuted in their ears, and when I mute it, it's gone from their ears. But just as a good starting point, I don't want it to follow on. So same thing here. I'm going to change it to post fader. Boom. Now the next thing I can do, I can set it to follow my send point to follow the fader, or be pre-fader or post fader. So all of these are already set to post fader. So if I don't, like for my keys IEM, I don't want that following my fader, because they want their keys to stay up loud and where they're at. So I'm just going to take that, I'm going to have everything follow the fader here, and then I'm going to take it off following the fader for his keys right there. And then it's no longer going to follow the moves that the front of house engineer is doing. And if they don't want anything to follow it, I can just get rid of it here, and we're not following the fader at all. So here, I'm going to keep it like that. And then let's say on this IEM 1, I want it to follow everything to follow the fader, and I don't want it to follow the on. Boom. And then we're good to go. And for the mic 1, I want to zoom down here to mic IEM 1, and I don't want it to follow the fader, so I'm going to take it off here, or I'm going to take it off here. Boom. And we're good to go. All right, so let's talk about how are they going to control it from the app. So what you're going to need is a router, wireless router that you're going to plug into the back of the control port on this board. There's a Dante port for Ethernet, and there's a control port for Ethernet on this, and you're going to put it in the control port, and then you can set up a network. I will definitely have a video on setting up network and all the practices that you want to do with that and everything else like that. But there's a My Monitor Mix app that Yamaha does, and then they'll see your board on the network when they're connected to your Wi-Fi router, and then they can select like, hey, I'm IEM 1, and then they have all the faders to adjust everything themselves. So that'll have to do with setting up our network over here, and we'll have to switch when I have the board. That's not something I can set up here, but for device control, this would be for like controlling everything that's on the network as far as our inputs and outputs go, and this mixer control would be for your in-ear system. So we'll definitely go through that down the line, but yeah, that's how I set up my in-ear monitor mixes to be on the Yamaha DM7, and stay tuned, we'll go through routing next. Thanks.